Yeah, today I'm going to tie the GS Nymph. It's it's got a tungsten bluey bead on it, and it comes in several sizes. Well, there's a slightly smaller one there, but the bead is quite heavy, and apparently it's a very good fly. Okay, first thing you do is put the hook in the vise with the bead loose. The bead will just be there hanging at the bend. And the bead is always put on with the big hole back. The small hole is towards the eye to stop the bead coming over. But I'm still going to put a head on the front here to help secure the bead and to stop it sliding off. It looks a bit better with a head anyway. But because there's such a big hole in the bead, this takes a bit of building up, but it's not a problem, just a little bit of time consuming. You can see how the silk is building up to form a head, and every so often you can park the silk at the front and try the bead for size. Still needs a bit more, so we keep going. I suppose it could be tied without a silk head. There, you see the bead is starting to grip, so it doesn't need a lot more. Just give it a little bit, one or two more, and the bead is still not quite there, but it's almost there. A few more winds, and the bead is now gripping pretty good. Okay, now the next thing we do, this bead has got a bit of a shell back over it, which I use cock pheasant tail for this, and I think this is the time to put this on. What we'll do is cut out a section like this, like that, put it on top of the hook, tied up against the back of the head really, and tie it over. One stray one there we'll pull out. Just on the top like that, and tie in some of this waste. Notice it slip a little bit. Tie in some of this waste to secure it, and I take this waste off. Okay, while I'm at that situation, I now tie off the silk with a whip finish. This hope it doesn't cause problems. Just 3 whips are enough, and that's there, and I tie off. Put my silk down for a moment, and with the varnish I now put a little touch of varnish at the roots of this. I'll call it a wing, but that helps to sort of stick the bead when I slide it up. Okay, we slide the bead up, just like that. And that's how that stays for a moment. Now I want to make that bead a bit more secure, and so I'm going to tie behind it. I start again, but this time, because this bead has such a big hole in it, I'm going to use a heavier silk. This is one for tying on rod rings, and this will hold this bead nice and secure. I've started the silk, and I'll go back and build up behind. Can you see that happening there? I build up behind, and again I tie off with a whip finish. Don't need many of these. because, in fact 2 is enough, because this is all going to be tied over later. While that's like that and secured, the bead cannot go forward and it cannot go back. So the next thing I do is I restart with my normal tie-in silk just behind the bead again. Now if I was to try to use this ordinary silk to build up behind the bead, it would take a long time, because the hole at the back is much bigger. I'm now going to put a little blob of varnish on top of this bead just to secure the shell back on the bead. Incidentally, the varnish I use for most of this work is Sally Hansen's Hard as Nails. It's for ladies who do their nails, and you can buy it in Tesco's or anywhere. Okay, what I do now is I fold over this shell back and spread it a bit with my thumb and gently tie it down. Don't tie too tight at this stage because you can cut it and it'll spring back over. Now that it's tied down, I cut it off. It should be more of a trim. And at that situation there, I take the silk down towards the bend. What I'm going to do now is tilt the vise a little bit, and I'll raise it up so that it's still in view. I've tilted it a bit so that I can get the materials on the back. Now again, the tail of this fly again is pheasant tail. It's a centre cock pheasant tail. I don't know if I've said that before. Okay, now this time I want the tails in line. I want the tips in line. So I draw them down to get them in line like that. And I cut off as many as I think we need. It's probably about 5 or 6. Excuse me being out of vision for a moment. Something like that. One odd one there. So that's our tail. And it goes on like this. If it's too long, you could draw it through before you get it too tight. And the same if it's too short. I think that's about right. And I'm taking the silk, as you can see, pretty well to the bend. Right, again, I'll even this up, and you'll notice the step between the silk and this. So if I cut it right, I'll sort of even out the body a bit. Right, now I'm going to put on the ribbon, which is a gold holographic. On the larger fly, I use the wider holographic. This gets tied in as normal. Sort of hook it under and just tie it in like that. And I even out the body a bit. Tidy up the body. The underbody, I should call this really. To there. Now I'm going to put on a dubbed fur body, as you can see by this fly, and I've had to blend some furs to get it right. And the blend I use is a piece of rabbit fur, which I just pull off, little bits like this, and a yellow seal's fur. Seal's fur, they're both natural furs. The seal's fur gives a bit of a sparkle, and blended with the rabbit, it gives that sort of greyish yellowy colour that we're trying to achieve. Now I'm going to dub it on. The way to use any dubbing, always, ensure you've got some wax on the silk, because that makes it a little bit tacky, and you always put on a little at a time, just like this. And a good tip, moisten your fingers, not wet them, just moisten them like this. Before I wind it on, I'm going to varnish the underbody to help it to stick. So again, back to my Sally Hansen's. And I just put some varnish along here. Now this helps to stick the dubbin down. It's not absolutely necessary because it'll be ribbed, but I want it to be a durable fly. Back to the dubbed body. Okay. I do this a bit at a time. Get to the back here and I start winding up like this. Pinch more. Do a little and often is better than a pile at once. And if you want a thicker body, don't add more in one spot. Go over with a thin dubbin, I think they call it a noodle. Go over several times. A little bit more moisture. And I tighten up like this and wind up. I'm not going to go dead tight to the bead at this stage. Now I'm going to rib it, and because this is a wide rib, I'm going to rib the same way as I wound on the dubbin, which is a bit unusual. Ribbing is normally counter wound, but this, I don't mind if this ribbon nestles down into the body. It doesn't matter too much with this fly. That's the ribbon on, and I now secure the ribbon with a couple of winds. Don't need too many because I'm going to put on more winds in a minute. And I remove that surplus. Now the next item is going to be a wing. I've got a little bit of Velcro stuck on a stick here. If you wanted to rough the body up, you could do that. Doesn't really matter because it's quite rough. Any outstanding really long ones can be nipped away like that. But I think part of the attraction of this fly, and probably a lot of nymphs, is the sort of rough appearance. Right, I didn't go tight up with that dubbing because I'm going to put a sort of a wing on this fly. Again, back to the pheasant tail. And we cut off again about the same number of pieces. Again, I want these level, so we draw them down to get the tips level. The ones up the top is what I'm working on. You see those up there? As I draw down, the tips become level. Okay, nip these off. Tips are fairly level. Decide how long you want the wing. I think about there, sort of towards the bend of the hook. I'm not quite sure, but I think so. And we tie it in tight behind the bead like that. 2 or 3 to secure it, and then nip them off. Nip off the waist. Now we're at that stage. I could finish off the fly there, but I'm just going to add a little bit more of the dubbing, the body dubbing, just to sort of hide the silk. I can't hide the silk completely because we're going to finish off with a whip finish. So I don't put very much on here. It's just a bare covering to cover the windings here. Just like that. And while I'm there, I give the whip finish to finish off. 1, 2, 3, and that secures our fly. As you know, a whip finish or the finish of the fly is normally done at the head here, but with a bead it's not a bad idea to finish at the back of the bead. Okay, now that's the finish of the fly. I'm just going to varnish the head and the windings. Back to my Sally Hansen's. Varnish, and I just put some tight behind the bead here. And, 'cause tight behind the bead there, and I do the head. And now I am at the eye of the hook, just touching it like this. That's our fly finished. Couple of stray fibres here. It may add to the attraction, I'm not quite sure. That's it finished. One little job always needs doing is clear the eye. You can use your dubbing needle or you can use a feather like that. And that's it. I'll put it in a holder to give a better view. When I say a holder, it's my hackle pliers. And you see that? The tail is pointed down, a little bit of a wing. There is the shell back on the head. So that's it really. I hope you learned something from that.